guess let's just jump in, and then if folks have questions, I think feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions, or if you're more comfortable, I will make sure I'm monitoring the chat room as well. So you all don't have to do that, and I'll ask those questions. If you feel more comfortable, just write them in the chat and I'll make sure to keep an eye on that. So who wants to kick us off with lessons learned?
Are we going to stick to your suggested outline? Is that?
If you would like.
Okay. That's fine.
Unless you have other things that you feel absolutely compelled to share.
No, I think that's great. Dorothy, you started to say something. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that I could kick off if you wanted me to.
That sounds great. Lead us away.
My project title is Parent-Child Reading Enhancement Program. And I would like to explain to you 3 accomplishments from the program. This program started in 2014 and ended in 2019. The 3 major accomplishments are: 1, we were able to train nearly 300 parents in how to teach their children how to read. Now, these 300 parents attended 6 weeks. They attended classes for 6 weeks, 3 hours per week. And so I felt like this is a major accomplishment to get parents to return for 6 weeks. The second major accomplishment is we were able to reach or increase the awareness of the importance of reading for more than 2,000 participants. And this was through other activities. And the third accomplishment is, although it has been more than 6 years for some of our participants, we still get reports on how the program helped them and their children. And some examples of this: just about 4 weeks ago, I received a telephone call, and that call was to just again thank us because her child, who's now in the 5th grade, is ranking amongst the top in her class. And she says all due to reading and the program that they attend. The second success story I want to speak about is back in February. There's a father who works at a service station here. He works giving out food. And as I was going to pay, I heard someone call, "You're the lady who teaches reading." And so he wanted to let me know how his child is doing. And the third one is through social media. We've had people to contact. We didn't know anything about it, but then people will tell us, "Oh, I saw on social media where the parents have said that their children are progressing due to the program." So those are the major accomplishments that I feel that this program has done. And the third question was, where is the project now? This project is currently within 4 of the 9 urban centers throughout the state of Alabama. And we are in nearly 22% of all counties throughout the state.
Awesome. That's great, Dorothy. That's so important. And I applaud you and your work for that. That is, to me, the real feedback. When you get that feedback from someone in the community that way, and you get to actually see, because a lot of the work we do, we never get to see the real results long term. So that's the best thing. Our project was a little different, as CYFAR projects often are. It started out in 2015 and went through 2020. And I didn't come on until the 3rd year as the PI. And there had been 4 PIs at that point. So we were talking yesterday in the orientation about having that plan of succession. Holy cow, I can't begin to tell you how important that is. Sometimes it needs to be a few layers deep. Because when I came in, I had worked with CYFAR projects before as an agent, but I had just moved into a new role as a specialist, and I was lost. I was laughing to someone yesterday, Mark, you probably don't remember this, but when I saw your face yesterday, I was like, oh, I remember sitting on the phone with you, talking me through report or CYFAR suite, something, I don't remember which, but I remember I was tearful and you were very kind and I appreciate that. So thank goodness for the support that we get through CYFAR to do our projects. And through part of that support, we had two main focuses of our grant. We did two evidence-based programs. One is Family Strengthening 10 to 14, and one is the BOTFN Life Skills. And so as we started moving into the fourth year, our CYFAR coach suggested that he could come and meet with us and help us start thinking about that forward planning for continuity and continuation. And so what we did was we started talking about how we could go ahead and start using some of the great tools that they have to help identify community strengths. Now, this is what Ms. Sarandon was talking about, is looking at those community strengths and trying to build on those strengths. And sometimes I think it's really hard for us to give up our babies that we have created. And one of the things that we were able to recognize was that we had different counties involved in the project. And in one county over here, there was an umbrella organization of the United Way that was very strong and had a very great coalition going forward and also had resources. And then over in our other county, we had what is called a family resource network. And so each of those wanted to continue the programs and be able to fund those programs. And we had to give up some control. And that's not always easy, okay, to plan ahead. But it was a good way to spread out the work of CYFAR for us. We were able to utilize some of the things that we had gotten through the CYFAR grant. For instance, we had one of our extension professionals trained in BOTFN Life Skills facilitator training. So she was able to train for no money. You know, we had already paid for her her training to be a trainer. And so that turned out to be extremely valuable. And she is still moving forward with that. And here we are a couple of years later into that now, that we're still training folks in the BOTFN Life Skills program. The Strengthening Families 10 to 14 is a little more difficult, and we actually we totally lost that struggle with the COVID, because, you know, that is a program where families come together and the kids go in this room and the families go in that. But I'm happy to say that the United Way is helping us retool and get ready to start that up again. And again, it was about having the right people trained. Whenever you bring a trainer, you might as well train 20 people instead of just bringing it in for just your, 10 or 12 people. So we were able to be visionary in that regard and get as much training, because the training seems to be a very expensive ticket for all of that, and hard to do. So that was really the best thing about it, I think, was being able to have that successive years of planning to be able to go ahead and launch things forward.
It's so exciting to hear everyone's stories. Here in New Jersey, again, just like CYFAR, like you said, are very different. Our focus in New Jersey was in the urban areas, 2 specific urban communities throughout New Jersey, and we actually do teen leadership focused with a teen leadership focused with a STEM background, and we actually worked with our urban teens through the project. Our project started in 2014. Our first cohort of teens started in 2015, and they stayed all the way through their entire high school career with us. And now, sort of, if you look at where we are now, our first year group already in their second year of college, some of them starting their third year of college. And then our group that sort of has continued on even after 2019. They will be graduating out of high school this year and moving on. Our focus was to meet with them at a local Boys and Girls Club twice a week, and we focused on STEM curriculum. But the twist was not just having them do STEM activities, but training them to teach STEM back to youth in their communities, both at the Boys and Girls Club, local libraries, science-sational days. They could come up with ideas of where they wanted to train and what they wanted to do. They had a lot of control over the project and ideas that things that they liked to do, things that they didn't find useful or helpful. And then we also, as we progressed onward, as they got a little older, we focused on career development, linking them with people in different fields of STEM. They got to learn and work alongside some scientists on campus at Rutgers, doing some STEM research, but then also talk to those in the field at places like Google and other local area professionals that are in the STEM field in all different capacities. So we really kind of got to follow them. I would say some of the benefits of CYFAR, obviously, we utilized a lot of the funding to create these locations that were then moved and used. So materials for STEM, the laptops and things like that. And I would say some unintended outcomes now that sort of CYFAR is over, but the pandemic hit, is that it was such a stop in programming. We moved a lot virtually, and we actually started lending our laptops to youth in our communities that were struggling at the beginning to have laptops, and their families that really needed additional use of computers in their homes to do schoolwork, but also participate in other activities. So we may have changed our youth focus. We still are working with our youth. They've continued on with us. Our programs expanded to include other urban areas. We are working with other groups like Google, Apple, Optum, all of these professionals that are helping to train our youth or work alongside our youth in STEM areas. So we've created this really nice, robust group of teens that have now taught, especially virtually, have had the option to teach across the entire state to youth from New Jersey and across the nation on STEM topics. So we've been really successful in maintaining that STEM leadership program even after our funding has dissolved. I will say one of the greatest struggles that we've had is some of our community partners and the changes, like you were talking about, sort of once there's a change in someone that said they were going to be supporting us and they have a new partner, or they've changed their staffing, then all of a sudden things changed for us. We sort of relocated our sites just because it was difficult to manage in some of our locations. And then I would say, maintaining staffing and transitioning staffing. So we've actually transitioned to training some of our teens' parents and older siblings who are in college to help become the leaders and the adult supports. And then the teens will actually teach. So we've kind of created a little bit of a new system there. But we're still going strong all across our state. So it's been very helpful, and it was a great way to start something new and keep it moving.
Fantastic. Thank you all for sharing. I think there's both the commonalities across CYFAR programs, and yet there's so much distinction between the various projects that we see. And I think you all highlighted that. So I want to open it up to questions. Are there other, I've been monitoring the chat. Thank you, Dr. Williams, for your comments in there. are there other questions? Are there things that you all want to share or you're curious about? I can talk a lot and fill the time, but I would prefer not to. So if you have questions, I'd love, for us to make this a much more interactive session.
One other thing that I would add, I had made notes before we talked, and I was just, I make notes and then I often don't ever look at them. So there you go. It's like going to the grocery store and forgetting things, even though you have it written down. So one other thing I wanted to add is it's so important to get the right people to the table on your CYFAR projects or any project, that you're going to do. And that's one of the ways we are truly blessed in West Virginia, even though we come in at the bottom of and with the worst indicators so many times. One of our strengths is that we are small and we all know each other. So when you go into a small community and you look at Huntington and Charleston, two of our largest cities, are only populations of around 50,000. Okay, so we're very small, rural, and so you come to the table with the same people all of the time. Okay, and grant funding will come and go, and so you'll know this person's over here this week, and they're working with this roots building organization, and then that is gone, and then they come back in this community action role or whatever. So I think getting those people early on before you even start with a CYFAR project per se is the most important piece. When we started looking for our sites with this project, we really wanted to look at places where we knew that the infrastructure of community was already there somewhat that we could build on. And that doesn't mean that you have to be rich in dollars. It's really the human capital thing about having the individuals that are willing to commit to youth or your families or your project that you're going to have. And I feel like that having that kind of interest right from the start was really what helped hold this project together, even when we were falling apart at the seams from the PI perspective. Okay, so there were people who were so committed to the families and children to keep this going that it really went forward. And then when the CYFAR money was able to end, we were able to say, well, then to continue, then what, and move forward. But I think that it is important to get that right from the start when you're trying to start up a new CYFAR project.
I would like to add a little bit more to about the project that we were implementing. We call it PCREP, and I'm sorry because I was thinking that we were just following the first three introduction questions. And so that's why I was just only answering those questions. But to give you a little bit more details about PCREP, PCREP was a program, and still is a program, in which we teach parents different reading strategies that they can use with their children. And these reading strategies are the 5 major components of reading. And from that, what we did, we had the parents with us as we sat for an hour and a half. On the first day, they would meet twice a week for an hour and a half. The second day, an hour and a half. The last 20 minutes of that hour and a half, we would have the parents to demonstrate some of the techniques that we taught them there in class, because we had service learning students who would be working with the children in another room as we taught the parents the skills. And when we taught the parents the skills, the parents then would demonstrate for us those skills with their children. So now, as when the funding ended, what we recognize with post-funding, we weren't able to work with the children. So with your post-funding and with sustainability, when you get toward that, from year one, you need to start working on sustainability. But in your last year, it's very important for you to sit back and evaluate your program and think about those things that you can cut out if you don't have enough funding. Those things that you can eliminate, but still accomplish the goal that you set out to accomplish. Because our major goal was to get the parents equipped with skills and knowledge in how to work with their children, because too many teachers are saying that parents do not help their children. Well, many times parents don't know how to help their children when it comes to reading, and that's what we found out. So in the post, now that our funding is over, what we did was, it is now a priority program within extension. And so this program is a required program for our urban extension agent, family extension agent. So they go out into the community, into the urban areas and teach. But we do not have enough individuals to teach the children. So we had to cut. We had to decide what we would cut, but still maintain the goal. And one of the things, and one of the questions we were asked to talk about is, if I were to do it over again, if I were to just start from year one, what would I have changed? The thing that I've changed, and it has been heavy on me, is I selected Madison County. We only worked in Madison County. And that's because the scores were low and because they were urban areas. It is an urban area, Madison County and Limestone County. If I were to do it over, I would have chosen the Black Belt. The Black Belt. I didn't choose it because it's a rural area. And I chose, my focus was on the urban area. But if I were to do it over, it would be the rural area in the Black Belt.
So I have two questions as follow-up, and every time you talk about this program, I keep getting chills because I love, like, I have a book problem, and so I think this is phenomenal. So my two questions following up on what you've said, I want you to speak more about why would you go rural instead of urban, A, and B, do you see expanding there in the future of the program?
The reason why I would go rural instead of urban is because I feel that the need is greatest there. Yes, the scores in Madison County and Limestone were low. Now, if you know about the extension in Alabama A&M, the focus is on urban extension. Auburn University, the focus has been on traditional extension. And that was created through a court decree. But now it is not that. So I feel that looking at the statistics, the poverty level in the Black Belt is extremely low. And the reading scores in the Black Belt is extremely low. Even though here in the urban areas, they are low and they are consistently low. But in the Black Belt, it is extremely low and it has been consistently extremely low. And then if you look at their graduation rate in the Black Belt, it's much lower than in the Madison County and Limestone. And I chose the Limestone and Madison County because I felt I would be nearer to it and I could have a better. Because starting out, this was my first time getting a CYFAR grant. And I wanted to be there to see it implemented and not going back and forth. I wanted to be with it daily. So that is why I chose Madison County and Limestone County. But if I were to do it again, I would just have to make sure I'm traveling. I will have to do a lot of traveling. But now that I know how to implement the program, I want to focus now on getting into that black belt with this program. And did I answer both of your questions? What was the second question?
That was the second question. If you wanted to go, if you had intentions to go back and follow up, and thank you for that. And I think that that's a really good thing for folks to hear, as far as, you know, we all make choices in our grant writing and our research programs and all of that. And, you know, until you do it, sometimes you don't know what the implications of your choices are. And so I think, you know, one thing, you know, that brought up for me is, as a first-time PI, I think it makes sense to want to be there and be more hands-on. And so I think that makes sense as a choice. And so, you know, I think it's good to hear experiences and kind of, well, if we could go back and do it again, here's what we would do and why. For me, I need the why part, not just the what are we going to do differently, but what, like, why would it make it different? What would come out of it differently? So thank you for that. Do other folks have questions or things from the panel that you all want to share? We've got about 15 minutes left. I will say you definitely made my coaching heart happy when you started talking about sustainability in year one, because I think that it's very easy when you're in the planning year to say, well, gosh, year 5 is so far away, we'll worry about that later. And you really can't. And I think that hearing that from you as well, we'll make it friendlier when us coaches have to remind you all to start thinking about sustainability in the first years of your project.
Yeah, the other thing I would like to add to that is, I think that we also have to remember to head off with the goal of bringing our CYFAR children into the larger 4-H program every way that we can, because just by the simple fact that we are working with some of the most vulnerable populations of youth, we have to understand that a lot of people have already failed these youth, and we don't want to be the next one. We need to really think hard about how we're making our work purposeful so that we can be inclusive of all youth in our larger 4-H programs. I was very interested to hear Dorothy talking about how your LGUs are situated, with one being an urban focus and one being a rural focus. And I was thinking back to the speaker earlier when she was talking about how it is on all of us to teach inclusion and belonging, and teach about racism. And, you know, I started off many years ago when I was an agent with a mentoring program that was just in the more urban area. And then I had my other program, which was all pretty ag based. And it was like those two just were, the adults were like oil and water, you know, and they were like, well, are those kids going to come to camp? And are those kids going to come to the fair? And I said, we are not going to use that terminology anymore. These are our kids. And yes, I sure hope they do. I sure hope they come. And so when you have that, when you have the kids that come together from the areas, the kids aren't the problem. You know, it's the adults, and the adults change their mindset too, because kids are kids. And if you love kids, you're going to love all kids the same when you're in that environment. You just got to get everybody to have that opportunity to find out. all the ways we're alike and the ways we're different. And we can teach that. And the best way to teach it is face to face. So I encourage you all to get those kids and adults together.
I would echo that completely. We are, my county is an extremely urban area. Our state is extremely urban. But what's interesting is we did a lot of taking of our programmatic kids from CYFAR into all of our traditional fairs across the state. So not just our fair, which is very different comparatively to some of our more traditional fairs in the county. And what really happened, which was, you know, a great success, is that we really had that cross boundary, cross county, where other clubs and members from traditional, what people would call traditional 4-H club, were super interested in what our teens were doing and what was happening in our county, that we were able to create these projects and expand in different ways, where teens in another county would teach our teens about alpacas, but our teens would then teach the alpaca teens about, you know, how to make a lamp, you know, so the STEM aspect in that area. So we had a really nice way of being able to do that. And I think it enhanced our programming as well, because everyone was exposed to so much difference and change, and they were able to incorporate it in so many different ways. And our teens really enjoyed experiencing it on both ends. So I think that's a really great way to also bolster your program and get other support. And then moving virtually for like this last year, we were able to expand that even to a greater area. So our teens would normally physically only be able to teach in our area because transportation's an issue, but going virtually, we learned that our teens could match up with a completely different county and teach with their faculty and staff after they were trained. And it was a great resource that we were able to offer across our entire state. So I think it's really a nice way to really mesh and meld the entire program and really highlight that 4-H can be so much, and these programs and extension can be so much more than what people may think of in their traditional aspect, or what people may think of in the urban aspect.
I think those are such great points. I chuckled a little bit, Nyla, when you said to be inclusive and teach inclusivity. I was on our school board meeting last night listening. It was a 10.5-hour meeting with public comment related to the teaching of cultural inclusive curriculum. And whew, it's just, you know, it reminds me of this idea that kind of echoes of we need to bring our kids in, and that we may be one of the places that they do feel most comfortable having these conversations, and how important it is that we create these safe spaces for our youth where we do teach these things. And I love the cross kind of teaching for so many reasons. Not only are you reaching more people, but maybe we get some youth who are like, oh, this teaching thing's not so bad. And we could, you know, bolster the next generation of educators, you know, because I think a lot of kids are seeing, you know, education as not going, I'm going to pick that. And so if we can maybe bolster that, maybe that's another added bonus that we can provide.
I would like to point out Karen's work. Is that Karen that's doing all of that board work over there?
I know, it's so pretty.
I need her to just hang out with me all the time I'm talking.
Mark, how do we set that up? We all need Karen to come and just supervise and make our Zooms look pretty and decorative and very efficient and effective. I mean, look at all the ideas we've come up with already.
Yeah, and it's an interesting skill, and it's an interesting way to present the information. That is for sure. Yeah. Hey, I don't remember anyone really talking much about the capacity of your organizations for supporting you in the sustainment of your programs. Is that something that you had, with support from your organizations?
I can talk a little bit about, we had some sustainability from our counties. So not necessarily our extension program support, but actually within the county support. So we actually received funding to maintain a person in our county to help with programmatic aspects of keeping our programs moving. Unfortunately, pandemic hit and we were in a search process, and we had selected some candidates, but we got sort of put on hold, and we ended up with just a part-time for the time being. But that position exists, and it's funded partially by the county and partially by some other funding. But I think what we did too was we worked and brought in corporate partners to teach with our teens, which then led corporate partners interested in supporting financially. So in different aspects, that could be material support for programs that they're going to teach alongside of our teens and help with, to funding fun things for our teens to participate in, to actually funding an actual program and providing funding for programmatic aspects. So we were able to link up our corporate partners that are in the STEM field with our teens at different levels. One was just inviting them to speak, and then they would come and speak to our teens about career readiness or different jobs in the career. And then they became interested because they're like, oh my God, these teens are like amazing and they're doing such great stuff. What can we do now? So we kind of just pulled people from local corporate organizations and with STEM skills, and then they started supporting. So we have funding from Google, we have funding from Bristol Myers Squibb, we have funding from Apple in different aspects and in different locations, which makes sense because of where they're located. So that has been a way that we've been able to sustain. I would say just extension funding is not the easiest to gather or garner right now for us. So we've been kind of circumventing that with some of our county partners and our corporate partners.
For us, extension funds the program totally, except for the agents who apply. We have had several agents to get funding from RC&D, which refers to Resource Conservation and Development Councils of Alabama. They have been very gracious in supporting the program. They have supported this program in several of the counties because there are 9 RC&D councils, and I know several of them have supported. But our administration has made this program one of our priority programs, and that's how we are sustaining it. We are sustaining it through external grants, but extension sustains it mainly.
Yeah, we did a couple of things. We had a young lady that worked with our CYFAR project in one of our counties all 5 years, and she did such a fantastic job. The agent she worked with said, we have to find a way to keep her engaged with youth here in this county because we need her so desperately. And we were able to find some other grant money to keep her on. And so now she's working still through extension with the mentoring program there in that county. And then in the other county, because the Family Resource Network was so interested in keeping the program going, the person that had worked in that role moved right over and is now employed through the Family Resource Network. So that has been it's again that human capital thing. We invest a lot of time and money and professional development in the people that come through the CYFAR channels. And at the end of that 5 years, they are a valuable resource that we do need to also find a way to hang on to as well. So I think that over the years, I've seen a lot of people come through the CYFAR channels that were able to go on and have brilliant careers in positive youth development. So I think that's an important piece as well.
Do folks have any questions? We've got just a few more minutes left. I hope you have all, I've learned a lot. I love hearing about all of the different programs around the country, because even as a coach, I get to hear snippets of other programs that I'm not coaching, but gosh, y'all do such cool stuff. Makes me want to like hear about everybody's cool programs and projects. And so I want to thank you all for sharing. In the chat, there haven't been really much questions. There was a comment about, planning and the importance of planning for sustainability, because you don't know what's coming. Especially someone mentioned that year 5 being in your pandemic year. So, yeah, you don't know what is coming. I don't know that any of us saw that pandemic year coming 4 years ago. So it's really important to be, as I told a group yesterday, to be flexible, and also to be planful in that flexibility. I think we've gotten a lot of good comments and suggestions from the panel related to sustainability, to advisory roles, to communication, all different types of elements of your program that you need to be considering in order to make sure that you're capitalizing on the possibilities for success. Any last questions, thoughts, things that you have to share before we I'm assuming somebody's going to kick us out of this room eventually, and that will be Mark. Mark will be kicking us out of the room.
You can, yep, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. So what'll happen next, I think, is that there's a short break. Is that correct?
Hold please, I will check my agenda. Yes, there is a break from 3:45 to 4 o'clock Eastern time. And then there is one additional set of breakouts before the end of today. I had to almost check the clock because I'm on Pacific time. So those were East Coast times. Just for those of you that are not on the East Coast. Thank you again to our speakers. Thank you, Karen, for your pretty whiteboard. I've got 2 in my office that need some accessorizing. I did get the 2020, all the things you didn't accomplish when you left for spring break and were gone for a year, off of the whiteboard.